What would you do if a little black girl walked into your billion-dollar toy store, placed two wrinkled dollars on the counter, and asked to buy a dad? That's exactly what happened on a snowy December afternoon in New York City. The kind of afternoon where the sky hangs low, the air bites just enough to make you rush between buildings, and Christmas lights flicker in window displays like promises waiting to be kept. Inside Gringer's Toys, the flagship store owned by billionaire mogul Elliot Granger, everything was polished, bright, and humming with holiday cheer. Gleaming marble floors reflected golden garlands. Ornaments sparkled. Every shelf overflowed with childhood wonder. Elliot Granger himself stood behind the counter, scanning a limited edition train set for a well-dressed couple. His face was composed, his coat expensive, and his thoughts were already on the investor dinner he had that night. Everything, as always, was in order. Until it wasn't. A quiet voice cut through the background music and holiday chatter, so soft it could have been missed. "I want to buy a dad." Elliot's hand froze mid-scan. The register beeped impatiently. Slowly, he looked up. Across the counter stood a little black girl, maybe 6, 7 at most. Her coat was too thin for the weather. Her sneakers, clearly hand-me-downs, flopped slightly at the toe. But her posture was proud, too proud for someone so small. She stepped forward and pushed a worn $2 bill, a few coins, and a single subway token across the glass. "I brought all my money," she said seriously. "Is it enough?" The world stopped. No one spoke. Even the teenage cashier paused her scrolling. The soft Christmas music played on, absurdly cheerful against the sudden stillness in the room. Elliot stared at the little girl. Something in his chest twisted. Not pity. No, not that. It was something older, deeper, a memory he hadn't touched in decades. "What did you say?" he asked gently, crouching slightly to her eye level. "I want to buy a dad," she repeated. Her voice trembled just once, then grew stronger. "My sister says your store has everything." Elliot looked at the girl more closely now. Her name, he'd learn later, was Nyla Monroe. But in that moment, she was simply a child with pigtails tied in fraying pink ribbons and hope clutched tightly in her mittened hands. He glanced down at the money on the counter. It wasn't just $2 and some change. It was faith, desperation, innocence the world hadn't yet stolen. "I'm Elliot," he said quietly. "I own this store. And sweetheart, I'm afraid we don't sell people." "Oh," Nyla said softly. She didn't cry. She didn't whimper or throw a tantrum like a typical child denied a toy. No, what came instead was worse. A slow, quiet disappointment that cracked something inside Elliot wide open. "I thought maybe if I saved enough, I could have a dad for Christmas," she murmured, mostly to herself. "The kids at school have dads. They go to the park. They don't look so tired all the time." Elliot's heart fractured right then and there. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "Where's your mom, Nyla?" "She went to heaven last year, cancer. Now my sister Jenna takes care of me. She's not really my mom, but she tries real hard." Before he could find the right words, the store's front doors burst open. The bells jingled violently. "Nyla!" a woman cried. Elliot turned. A young black woman in a faded red diner uniform rushed in, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Her apron was dusted with flour. Her hair had slipped from its bun and clung to her cheeks. She looked frantic and exhausted. She dropped to her knees and pulled the little girl into her arms. "Baby, you can't run off like that," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I was buying us a dad," Nyla explained solemnly, gesturing to the counter. "But I don't have enough." The woman, Jenna, lifted her eyes to Elliot, and in 1 second he saw her entire soul. Panic, embarrassment, fierce protectiveness, and shame. "I'm sorry she bothered you," she said tightly. "She gets ideas sometimes." "She didn't bother me," Elliot replied softly. "She reminded me why I built this place." Jenna didn't respond. She just placed herself between Nyla and the man who owned everything. "May I walk you both to the door?" Elliot offered. "We're fine," Jenna said firmly, gathering Nyla's tiny hand. "We don't need help." They turned to go, but something in Elliot wouldn't let them leave like that. "Wait," he called. "What's your name?" The woman paused just long enough to reply. "Jenna Monroe." He nodded. She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. just the faintest expression of surprise that a billionaire had bothered to ask. Then they were gone, a woman stitched together with overnight shifts and strength, and a little girl who tried to buy what the world told her she couldn't have. That night, Elliot didn't attend his dinner. He sat alone in his penthouse office high above Fifth Avenue, staring at the skyline while the city moved without him. He thought about Nyla's voice, her eyes, her certainty. "I want to buy a dad." It haunted him, not because it was sad, but because it was familiar. He remembered being a boy not much older than Nyla, staring at a casket, his pockets full of marbles. He had whispered to his mother, "If I give them all my marbles, do you think they'll give him back?" No empire he had built since had filled that hole. He pressed the intercom button. "Marshall?" "Yes, sir." "I need everything on Jenna Monroe. Lives in the Bronx, early 20s, legal guardian of a little girl named Nyla." There was a pause. "Understood, Mr. Granger." The next morning, as Elliot pored over the file on his desk, her 4 jobs, no criminal record, no complaints, no assistance, no backup, he whispered to himself, "She's holding her world together with duct tape and faith." And yet, she hadn't asked for anything. Not charity, not attention, only Nyla had. That evening, long after closing, Jenna was folding laundry at the 24-hour laundromat. Her hands were red from bleach, her eyes sunken from too little sleep. The fluorescent lights above flickered. The hum of old dryers filled the silence. The bell above the door jingled. She looked up. It was him, Elliot Granger, in a navy coat holding a paper bag. "I'm sorry," Jenna said instinctively. "We're closing up." "I know," he replied gently, "but I thought you might like some dinner." He placed the bag on the folding table. "Pulled pork sandwiches from Clark's and real sweet tea. Nyla told me you liked them." Jenna froze. "How did you—" "She reminds me of someone I used to be." There was silence. Then Jenna stepped forward, took the bag. "Why are you really here?" she asked. He looked at her. Not as a billionaire, not as a savior, just a man who had heard something true and couldn't unhear it. "Because a little girl offered me $2 and reminded me what real wealth looks like. Some people spend millions to feel alive again." Elliot Granger only needed a 6-year-old with $2 and a dream. In the days after Nyla's visit to Gringer's Toys, Elliot became a ghost in his own company. He still wore his custom suits, still sat at meetings, but his mind was elsewhere, stuck in a moment that had flipped everything upside down. He couldn't shake it. The girl's voice, the weight of her hope, and the way Jenna, that young woman with tired eyes and a spine made of steel, stood between the world and her sister like a one-woman army. By the 3rd day, Elliot had made up his mind. "Marshall," he said over the phone, "call the design team. I want a custom toy created immediately, a single production unit." "Of course, sir. Any specifications?" "Yes, it should look like Nyla. Skin tone, braids, everything. I want it wrapped and delivered quietly. I don't want a logo on it. No press, no branding." He paused, then added, "Inside, place a note, and the compass pin from the legacy drawer." Marshall didn't ask questions. He knew better than to interrupt his boss when his voice dropped to that tone. 2 nights later, in a small Bronx apartment, Nyla sat cross-legged on a rug fraying at the edges. The space smelled faintly of fried onions from dinner and lavender sachets Jenna used to keep the roaches away. On her lap sat a doll. It was wrapped in soft tissue, tied with a red ribbon. She had found it waiting for her after school with a tag that said simply, "For Nyla. Thank you for reminding us what matters." Jenna had stared at the package with suspicion, but when she saw the doll's face, brown skin, soft smile, and braids just like Nyla's, she had said nothing. Sometimes the world gives you crumbs of kindness, and you take them without asking where they came from. Nyla named the doll Hope. She whispered to it at bedtime, sat it next to her at breakfast, tucked it into her backpack like a guardian angel. But one afternoon, while fidgeting with the doll's buttons, something clicked. Literally. A faint, mechanical click beneath the hairline. Curious, Nyla poked around and discovered a tiny hidden seam. Inside was a folded note and something else. A small golden pin, shaped like a compass rose. Her fingers trembling, she unfolded the note. For the brave one who sees what others overlook. This is not a toy. It's a key. Keep it safe. E.g. Nyla stared at it. Was it a secret game? A treasure hunt? She looked toward the kitchen where Jenna was sorting unpaid bills by the flickering stove light. Her sister's lips were pressed tight, her brows drawn with silent calculation. Nyla thought about saying something, but she didn't want to add to Jenna's already heavy world. So she folded the note carefully and tucked it back inside Hope's hidden pouch. For now. Downtown, in a boardroom lined with glass and ambition, Elliot Granger sat stone still as the quarterly forecast was read aloud. Global toy market projected to shrink by 2.4%. Demographic data suggests... Enough, Elliot said suddenly. The executives blinked. I'll review it later. This meeting is adjourned. Back in his office, he opened the legacy drawer, something only he and his late father had ever used. Inside were 12 identical pins, golden, compass-shaped, glowing faintly when touched. Now there were 11. He pressed his fingers to the one Nyla had. A slow pulse of light ran across its edge. Few people knew what these pins meant. Fewer still had held one. But a 6-year-old girl in the Bronx now had access to a part of the world Elliot hadn't spoken of in over a decade. He hadn't told anyone why, until Marshall knocked. Sir, we have the full background. Go on. Marshall laid the file on the desk. Jenna Monroe, age 27, legal guardian of Nyla Rose Monroe. No criminal record, lives in a 2-bedroom rent-controlled apartment in the Bronx. Works 4 jobs, no government assistance. Elliot flipped through the pages. One photo stopped him cold. Jenna standing in her building's hallway, balancing a laundry basket with one arm, holding Nyla's hand with the other. And Nyla, giggling, unbothered by the world's weight, was wearing the same coat and faded sneakers she'd worn in the store. She does it all herself, Marshall said quietly. No help. No support. Elliot tapped the photo. She reminds me of someone we failed, he said, his voice distant. Marshall didn't ask who. He didn't need to. That night, Jenna noticed something had changed in Nyla. Her sister was quieter. Not sad, just focused. She'd stare at people on the subway. Watch the old man who sold hot dogs on the corner. Ask strange questions. Jenna, she said one evening, can people hide good secrets, not just bad ones? Jenna paused mid-sip of her tea. Yeah, sometimes good things hide too, especially when they're scared. Nyla nodded solemnly. Then she clutched her doll tighter and whispered, Then I think Hope is hiding something. Later that night, after Nyla had gone to bed, Jenna adjusted the doll's position and felt the same bump Nyla had discovered. Curious, she investigated. When she found the flap and unfolded the note, her heart nearly stopped. This is not a toy. It's a key. She turned it over. The initials E.G. Elliot Granger. The Billionaire. She looked toward Nyla's sleeping form. Something was happening. Something she hadn't agreed to. The next morning, she was at the toy store the minute it opened. To her surprise, Elliot was already there, pacing by the window like a man haunted. When he saw her, he froze. You found it, he said. Jenna held up the note, her voice sharp. What is this? What are you doing with my sister? Elliot looked around, then quietly ushered her inside. Behind the counter, in a hidden room she'd never noticed, he showed her the legacy drawer, the map, the 12 pins, the stories of girls and boys who had changed the world without anyone noticing. I used to be part of something, he said, a network of people who believed that real change didn't come from speeches or votes. It came from watching, listening, helping, quietly. Your sister, she sees what others ignore, and that matters. Jenna stared at him. She's 6. She's ready. I'm not, Jenna said. Maybe, Elliot replied, but she is. Some people chase ghosts, but for Jenna Monroe, the ghosts were starting to chase back. It started with a whisper, a single sentence from Nyla, murmured one morning as they walked past the corner bodega, just as the first rays of sun slipped between the brick buildings of the Bronx. Jenna, I think someone's watching us. Jenna stopped. What do you mean, baby? Nyla didn't answer right away. She looked over her shoulder, squinting. He's got a long coat. He stands real still. He was near the store the other day, then outside school. Jenna's stomach dropped. She scanned the street, just the usual chaos of the morning rush. Delivery vans, a man shouting at pigeons, a woman with a stroller and tired eyes. But Jenna had learned something over the years. When Nyla said she felt something, you didn't brush it off, because Nyla noticed things. Always had. That night after Nyla had gone to bed, Jenna sat at the small kitchen table with the doll, Hope, beside her. She turned it over in her hands, examining every seam. She wasn't just looking for another note. She was looking for proof that her gut wasn't lying. She was looking for confirmation that something in their world had shifted, and not in a gentle, magical way, in a dangerous one. Across town, in the penthouse above Fifth Avenue, Elliot Granger was on the phone. "I need eyes on Jenna and Nyla." Discreetly, no contact, just observation. Marshall's voice crackled through the line. "Sir, is this about what you saw on the security feed?" Elliot didn't answer at first. 'Cause yes, it was. That afternoon, a man had appeared in the shadows outside Gringer's Toys. Tall, coat too heavy for the weather. He never came inside, just stood there, and then vanished. There had been nothing on the cameras before or after, just a flicker, a presence. Gone in less than 30 seconds. But Elliot had felt it, the way one sometimes feels a shift in gravity before a storm. He tapped the edge of his desk, staring at the glowing pin in his drawer. Someone else knew about the key, and worse, someone was looking for it. 3 days later, Jenna received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photograph, a blurry image of a man in military fatigues, standing in front of what looked like an old airplane hangar. On the back, written in faded blue ink, were 5 words: "Catching shadows. Blink once. R." Jenna stared at the note, her fingers trembling. Something about the handwriting stirred a memory. Late nights, her mother at the window, whispering names she never explained. She ran to the hallway closet, dug out the old shoebox her mother had left behind. Inside, beside the faded photographs and a broken keychain, was a napkin with a single name scribbled in the same blue ink: Elliot Granger. Her breath caught. Everything she feared was true. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Her mother had been connected to him, and now Nyla was holding a key to something their mother had buried years ago. The next morning, Jenna stormed into the toy store before opening hours. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't knock. Elliot was already inside, staring out the window. He didn't seem surprised to see her. "You knew my mother?" she said. "Yes," he admitted. "Before she was your mother, she was my contact, in Memphis. Then D.C. for a brief time, New York." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because she walked away," Elliot said quietly. "After Raleigh. After something went wrong. She blamed herself. She asked us to let her go." Jenna felt her knees buckle. She gripped the edge of the counter. "My mom was one of you. She was better than most of us. And now my little sister is being dragged into whatever this is?" "She's not being dragged," Elliot said gently. "She's being called." Jenna looked at him then, truly looked, and she didn't see a billionaire. She saw a man carrying a legacy that scared even him. That night, Jenna sat Nyla down at the kitchen table. The lights were dim. The air was heavy. "I want to tell you something about Mom," she began softly. Nyla looked up from her grilled cheese. "She was one of the good ones," Jenna said. "She helped people, in secret, quietly." Nyla blinked slowly. "Like me?" Jenna nodded, and then Nyla whispered, "I think that man is following us because of her." Jenna's spine stiffened. "What man?" "The one in the coat. He never blinks. He stands really still. He was near the school yesterday." Jenna stood up fast, went to the window. Outside, the street looked ordinary, but her gut screamed otherwise. Something is coming. The next morning, Jenna walked Nyla to school herself. She scanned every car, every alley, every bus stop. At the school gate, Nyla hesitated. "Jenna, if something bad happens, will you tell Mr. Granger?" "What do you mean, baby?" Nyla dug into her backpack and handed her a folded piece of paper. This wasn't the same note from the doll. This one was older, crumpled, faded. "I found it under the doll's stuffing," she said. "It was deep inside." Jenna unfolded the paper. Her blood ran cold. "If you're reading this, the list has been activated. Look for the initials CD and the phrase Blue Harvest. Trust no one in uniform. Don't forget the name Raynard Walters. Jenna froze. Where did you say you found this? Nyla whispered. Inside Hope's chest, tucked in the corner. Later that night, Jenna didn't go home. She took the train to the Lower East Side and walked into a bookstore with no sign on the door. Inside was a man named Theo, older, quiet, eyes like cracked marble. When she showed him the note, his hands shook. Raynard Walters, he whispered. He's not just a name, he's a ghost. And if his name's back in play, someone's about to get hurt. Who was he? Jenna asked. Theo looked at her for a long moment. The man your mother couldn't save. Sometimes the truth doesn't knock on your door. Sometimes it kicks it off the hinges. That night, Jenna barely slept. She kept the lights on. Every creak in the walls made her heart jump. Nyla slept soundly on the couch, clutching hope against her chest, unaware of the storm gathering outside their worn apartment windows. Jenna sat at the table with the note open in front of her. The list has been activated. Look for the initials, CD Blue Harvest. Trust no one in uniform? Raynard Walters. Raynard Walters. Her mother had whispered that name in her sleep once. Jenna had thought it was nonsense. A dream, a memory, but it was real. And now, someone knew they had it. By morning, the air felt heavier. Jenna felt it the moment she opened the apartment door, like someone watching from just out of sight. She closed it fast and double-locked it. She didn't take Nyla to school. Instead, she packed a bag, some clothes, cash from the emergency envelope taped under the sink, the note, the doll, the pin, and the drive she hadn't dared plug into anything yet. When Nyla woke up, she asked quietly, "Are we going on a trip?" Jenna smiled, tight, uneasy, just for a night or two. "Will it be safe?" Jenna paused, then knelt beside her and said, "I'll keep you safe." But in her gut, she wasn't sure she could promise that anymore. They took a cab to Queens. The address Elliot had scribbled for her was burned into her memory. The house looked abandoned. Peeling paint, weeds growing through the porch, a mailbox stuffed with pizza flyers. But when Jenna stepped onto the porch, the motion light above flickered once, then died. She turned to Nyla. "That's our signal." They stepped inside. Dust hung in the air. The floors creaked. Old photographs lined the hallway walls. Children, all black or brown, smiling in framed stills like ghosts frozen in time. In the back room, a figure stepped forward. Tall, dark coat, graying beard. "I'm Lyle," the man said. "I was your mother's second contact." Jenna tightened her grip on her daughter's hand. "She told me to wait," Lyle continued. "She said one day a little girl would show up with a doll and a key, and that when she did, everything would begin again." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small metal case. It had no branding, no lock, just a symbol etched on the surface, a compass rose. He handed it to Nyla. She said only the girl could open it. Nyla looked at Jenna. Jenna gave a slight nod. With trembling fingers, Nyla reached into Hope's hidden compartment and pulled out the pin. She pressed it to the case. It clicked open. Inside was a single USB drive. Red label. One word printed in black letters. Project Redemption. Lyle stepped back. "That drive has names," he said. "Files, logs, evidence of surveillance done on children. Like her, like you, like your mother." Jenna stared at it. "Why us?" "Because silence," Lyle said, "kills faster than bullets. Your mother believed someone would have the courage to speak. Maybe that someone is Maya." Jenna knelt beside her sister. "Baby, you don't have to carry this," she said softly. But Nyla just looked up and said, "I think this is what I was supposed to find." 2 hours later, they were gone. Through the back alley, out the side of a bakery, into the subway with the USB hidden in a worn plushie. They didn't know yet how long they had, but someone had found them. That night, back in the Bronx, men in coats entered the apartment. They didn't knock. The front door splintered like a matchstick. They moved quietly, no words, no violence, just methodical searching. They checked vents, floorboards, the backs of picture frames. One man picked up the doll's extra ribbon from the floor. "Too late," he said into his earpiece. Package is gone. Jenna and Nyla checked into a motel near Trenton. Cash only. No questions asked. The room smelled like mildew and cheap detergent, but it had a lock, a bed, and a curtain thick enough to keep the world out. Nyla sat on the bed, absently turning the USB drive in her hands. Jenna watched her from the corner. She hadn't told her everything yet, about the people who might come, about the systems that saw her sister not as a child, but a threat. Instead, she said, "We're going to meet someone tomorrow. Her name is Camille. Is she a friend? She's someone who believes truth still matters." Nyla nodded, then whispered, "What if they find us?" Jenna crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt beside her. "Then we run again. But we keep the story safe, and we keep each other safe. That's all that matters." The next morning, Jenna met Camille Booker in a quiet library near the bus station. Camille was older than she expected, maybe late 30s, wore thick glasses, moved like a woman who'd carried too many secrets for too long. "You're Jenna," she said softly. "I've read your mother's notes." "You knew her?" Camille shook her head. "Only through the Legacy network. But I always hoped I'd meet her daughter." She reached out and touched the USB drive like it was radioactive. "Do you know what's on this?" Jenna hesitated. Camille pulled out a small, secure laptop, plugged it in. They both leaned in. Dozens of folders appeared, labeled in cold, clinical ways. Observation tier, behavioral flag minors, EchoKid, Phase 1, Blue Harvest entry points. Camille clicked one. Inside were documents, photos, audio files, all tracking children in at-risk neighborhoods. Profiles based on test scores, family structure, even voice recordings taken from classroom devices. It was systemic, institutional, invisible, and now undeniable. "They're not just watching," Camille said. "They're steering. They're reshaping outcomes, failing kids on purpose to create patterns. And it all started with Project EchoKid." Jenna closed her eyes. "They labeled my sister," she whispered, "because she's quiet, because she draws, because she watches." Camille nodded. "Then we expose it, and we start with her." They came before sunrise. 3 black SUVs. No sirens, no uniforms. Just silence and intention. The safe house in Newark shook as boots thundered against the front steps. Jenna had felt it coming. She hadn't slept. Neither had Camille. Inside the small basement lined with papers, maps, and coffee-stained laptops, Nyla sat cross-legged on the floor, calmly finishing her drawing. She was sketching a girl with armor made of stars. Behind her, a group of people stood, her sister Camille, even Mr. Granger. She looked up as the walls trembled. "They're here, aren't they?" she asked softly. Jenna nodded. "But so are we." Marcus, the former Marine who'd been guarding the house, turned to Jenna. "Take the side tunnel. We practice this. You and the kid go. Camille and I will draw them in. But no time." He pulled open the hidden panel behind the bookshelf. Jenna grabbed Nyla, the doll Hope, and the hard drive. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Stay low. Don't stop. Don't speak unless I say so." Nyla nodded, clutching the drawing in one hand, the doll in the other. They slipped into the tunnel. Above them, the front door shattered. It took 35 minutes to reach the emergency extraction point. The city above them still slept, unaware. They emerged through the back of an abandoned laundromat. The car was already waiting, driven by a contact of Camille's named Latrice. She didn't speak, just drove, fast, toward the only place where the truth could be louder than the silence. A small radio station on the edge of Trenton, one that still believed in long-form journalism and unfiltered interviews. Inside, the host, a man named Rufus, adjusted the mic. "You ready?" he asked Nyla. She looked up, her small shoulders square. "Yes." The broadcast started at 7:03 a.m. By 7:09, the station's phone lines were full. At 7:12, a clip of Nyla's voice saying, "I'm not bad, I'm just quiet, but I see everything," had gone viral. By 8 a.m., national news had picked up the story. By noon, EchoKidExposed was trending across 5 platforms. Camille sat at a diner booth watching it all unfold on her phone. Jenna was beside her, staring blankly at the window. Do you think they'll stop? Jenna asked. Camille shook her head. Number. But they'll run slower. They'll be watched now. Investigated. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. But more than that, they'll be afraid. Afraid of the girl who wouldn't go quiet. A week later, a congressional committee announced an emergency hearing. Jenna was invited to testify. She brought one thing with her, Nyla's drawing. She placed it on the table before the microphone and said, "This is what surveillance didn't see. A child, a sister, a survivor." Across the chamber, reporters scribbled. Senators leaned forward. Jenna's voice did not shake. They labeled her before she had a chance to speak, before a teacher met her, before a test was taken, and they do it to hundreds, maybe thousands of kids just like her. She picked up the drawing, but this time, one of them drew her way out. 2 months passed. Investigations opened in 5 states. Contracts were suspended. Corporate executives denied everything, then lawyered up. But Jenna didn't care about the headlines. What she cared about was that Nyla was laughing again, that her name was no longer followed by risk in anyone's files, that she had a new pair of sneakers and friends who called her brilliant. And that one evening while walking home, Nyla looked up at her and said, "I don't want to buy a dad anymore." Jenna paused. "Oh, I just want people to see me, really see me." Jenna knelt down, tears brimming. "They see you now, baby. They see you." At Gringer's Toys, a new display was quietly installed. It wasn't advertised. No billboards, no press release. Just a corner near the reading nook. A single doll sat on a pedestal. Brown skin, pink ribbons, braids. Below it, a small plaque read, "Hope." Inspired by a girl who reminded us that even small voices hold the power to shake empires. No price tag, not for sale. But visitors came every day. Some to look, some to cry, some to whisper, "Thank you." On the night of the 1-year anniversary of Nyla's visit to the toy store, Jenna received a letter in the mail. No return address, just one sentence inside. "You changed the game. Now we watch it together. AR." She folded it, smiled softly, and tucked it into the back pocket of her journal. That night, as stars blinked overhead and city lights flickered below, Jenna and Nyla stood on the rooftop of their building. Nyla held hope in one hand and her newest drawing in the other. It showed 2 girls on a hill, facing a horizon filled with glowing symbols. Above them, one sentence, "We are the ones who don't disappear." Jenna wrapped an arm around her sister. "You still believe in heroes?" she asked. Nyla leaned against her. "No," she said, then smiled. "But I believe in me." And together they watched the sky, no longer afraid of shadows, because they had learned the truth. You don't need to buy love. You just need someone to see you and refuse to let you be erased.